Every country on Earth is drowning in debt, but nobody ever asks the real question. If everyone owes money, who's the creditor? Let's be honest. When you hear the word debt, your first thought is probably your credit card bill or your student loans. But here's the wild part. It's not just you. It's everyone. Every country, every government, every so-called powerhouse economy is in debt. The United States? Trillions in the red. Japan? Even deeper. The European Union? Swimming in deficits. It's like the whole planet is living paycheck to paycheck, borrowing from someone. But wait, if everyone owes money, who's the creditor? Who's that mysterious figure sitting at the top of the pyramid, collecting the interest, pulling the strings? Today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most mind-bending questions in global finance, and I promise, by the end of this video, you'll never look at money, debt, or even your taxes the same way again. The great global illusion. Let's start with something most people don't realize. Debt is not always a bad thing. It's the fuel that keeps modern economies running. Think of debt like the blood in our financial system. It keeps money moving, people spending, companies building, and governments operating. But somewhere along the line, that system got hijacked. Every nation started borrowing more than it produced. Politicians realized they could spend money they didn't have and leave the bill for future generations. And as long as the economy kept growing, nobody cared. Debt was invisible. Until one day, it wasn't. Now, every country on Earth owes billions or even trillions. But to who? Because mathematically, that doesn't make sense. Someone has to be holding the other side of the ledger. The mystery creditor. Here's the thing. When we say countries are in debt, we're really saying they owe money to bondholders. Governments borrow money by selling government bonds, basically IOUs with interest. So when the US borrows money, it issues treasury bonds.
But who buys those bonds? That's where things get interesting. Some are held by other countries, like China, Japan, or Saudi Arabia. They invest in US treasuries because they're considered safe. But here's the twist. America owes money to China, and China owes money to America. Japan owes money to both, and the European Union owes money to everyone. It's like a global game of financial musical chairs, where everyone's lending and borrowing from each other, and nobody really knows who's sitting when the music stops. So who's really making money from this system? The real creditors, the financial elite. Let's pull the camera back even further. The real creditors aren't countries, they're institutions. The central banks, the investment funds, and the financial markets that lend to governments and profit off the interest. Take the Federal Reserve in the United States, often called the Fed. It's not technically owned by the US government. It's a network of 12 regional banks with private shareholders. Yes, private. That means private entities benefit from the system that literally creates US dollars out of thin air. When the government needs money, it borrows by issuing bonds. The Fed buys those bonds by creating new money, digitally, instantly, and lends it to the government. The government spends it, and over time, taxpayers pay it back with interest. That means every dollar in circulation comes with a built-in price tag, and the people collecting that interest? The financial elite who own the mechanisms of credit. They're not villains hiding in the shadows, but they are the ones quietly shaping the global economy. The illusion of money. Here's a truth most people never hear. Money is debt. Every dollar in your wallet, every number in your bank account, represents someone else's liability. When the government prints money, it's borrowing from the future. When a bank gives you a loan, it doesn't hand you someone else's cash. It creates new money by typing digits into your account. And that's how everyone can be in debt at the same time. Because in this system, debt is money. If all debts were paid off tomorrow, the global money supply would vanish overnight. The economy would crash, and your savings would disappear. Because the world's wealth is built on a mountain of IOUs. So when people say the US national debt is $35 trillion, it sounds scary, but that debt is also someone else's asset. Pension funds, banks, hedge funds, and even you, yes you, through your 401k, might own a piece of it. The system balances itself until it doesn't. The 1% understand the game. Now here's where it gets personal. The ultra-wealthy, the top 1%, they understand this game. They know debt isn't just an obligation, it's a tool. While most people spend their lives trying to stay out of debt, the rich use it to get richer. They borrow money at low interest rates to buy assets, real estate, companies, stocks that produce income and appreciate over time. And when inflation rises, their debt becomes cheaper to pay back in future dollars. Meanwhile, the average worker gets trapped. Wages don't keep up with inflation, and every dollar they earn loses value while their debts grow. It's like running on a treadmill that's constantly speeding up. The 1%? They're the ones who own the treadmill. The global debt web. Now imagine this system on a global scale. Countries borrow to fund wars, build infrastructure, or bail out banks. But the money they borrow often comes from those same banks. When the International Monetary Fund or World Bank lends to developing nations, it's not out of charity, it's business. Those loans come with strings attached, austerity measures, trade agreements, or control over natural resources. In other words, debt becomes a weapon, a quiet way to control entire nations without firing a single bullet. Economists call it debt diplomacy. And it's not just poor countries, even wealthy ones depend on the same financial lifelines. Every nation is caught in this web, owing, lending, and rolling over debt, hoping the music never stops. So, who's the creditor, really? Let's go back to our question. If every country is in debt, who is the creditor? The answer isn't a single person or nation, it's a system. A self-reinforcing loop of credit and debt run by central banks, financial institutions, and investors who've mastered how to profit from that system. In the 21st century, power doesn't come from armies or oil, it comes from control of credit. The ability to decide who gets money, how much, and at what cost. That's why when crises hit, like the 2008 crash or the 2020 pandemic, central banks step in, not governments. They decide which companies live or die, which industries get bailouts, and which economies recover. They don't need votes. They have the printing press.
The hidden price of the global debt machine. Now, you might ask, why not just print more money and pay everyone off? Because inflation is the invisible tax. Every time more money is created, your savings lose a little bit of value. That's how governments pay their debts, not by raising taxes directly, but by devaluing your money over time. So when you see headlines about national debt hitting new highs, remember, that's not just numbers on a screen. It's a silent shift of wealth from the working class to the asset owners, from the many to the few. And here's the plot twist. The 1% don't fear inflation. They own the assets that rise in value when inflation spikes: real estate, gold, stocks, even art. For them, the debt-based system is a golden goose. For everyone else, it's a hamster wheel. The future of debt: digital money and control. Now let's talk about where this is heading. Central banks around the world are experimenting with digital currencies called CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies. These aren't cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. They're fully controlled, programmable forms of national money. Imagine a world where every transaction is tracked, every dollar can be frozen, and spending can be limited or taxed instantly. That's not a conspiracy, it's the next evolution of money. And when that happens, the question of who's the creditor becomes even clearer, because the system will no longer just own your debt. It'll own your data, your transactions, and your freedom to spend. The escape plan. Think like the 1%. So what can you do? You can't escape the system entirely, but you can play the game differently. Start by thinking like the creditor, not the debtor.
Invest in assets that generate income, not liabilities that drain it. Learn how to use good debt to acquire cash-flowing opportunities. The rich borrow to buy income-producing assets. The poor borrow to buy stuff. That's the entire difference. Build multiple streams of passive income from investments, side businesses, and digital assets, because in a world built on debt, the only real freedom is cash flow. The moral of the story. So the next time you hear a politician say, "We're increasing the national debt," don't panic. Ask yourself, who's getting paid? Because behind every $1 trillion deficit is $1 trillion profit, just not for you. Every country owes money, every citizen pays interest, and every government prints promises. But the real creditor isn't human. It's a machine, powered by belief, credit, and the endless cycle of debt. And as long as people trust money, the system keeps spinning. But here's the secret. Once you understand the system, you can stop being the product and start being a participant. So remember this. The world doesn't run on money. It runs on debt. And the people who profit from it aren't necessarily smarter. They just understand the rules better than everyone else. So start learning the game. Build assets, create income while you sleep, and next time someone says, "Every country is in debt," you'll smile, because you'll know the truth. The creditor isn't a country. It's the system. And in this system, you can either be trapped by it or thrive within it. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more deep dives into how money really works. Remember, it's not about working harder. It's about understanding the system and letting your money work harder than you ever could. Until next time, this is the Rich Trudel, helping you see the hidden truths about wealth, debt, and the power of money.